Hello, everyone. I'm Keith DeStone, and this is HeroesX Office Hours for version 13 of HeroesX. I'm here, as usual, with Greg Naj and Sarah and Janet and Helen for the discussion questions for hours 16 and 17. The hour 16 question is, if you were attending the first performance of the Agamemnon of Aeschylus in 458 BCE, would you need the background that you get from hearing about Agamemnon in a performance of the Iliad? So can you go it alone if you're just dropped into history at 458 BC, or do you need
Yes.
do you need the Iliad? Do you need Homer to tell you what's going on?
Wow, Keith, you said that so beautifully. I love it.
Thanks.
Well, one participant is wondering, is Agamemnon's character more complex in the Iliad than in the play? And the participant gives two concrete examples from the Iliad, like when Agamemnon takes away Chryseis from Aeschylus, and when Agamemnon kills Adrastus.
Yes, and maybe if I addressed the first example, what I always found very telling about Agamemnon, even in the Iliad, is that he seems so callous about his wife. And whatever you and I may think of Clytemnestra, if Agamemnon is going to refer to her as kouridiē, then that word in and of itself tells you that Clytemnestra, the wife, should be the childhood sweetheart, so to speak. In other words, that there should be special emotional ties with the woman that you courted and married, the first wife, so to speak, and all the elements of courtship are built into this word kouridiē, because it means something like duly courted. In other words, somebody that you married after a period of courtship that is sanctioned by the society. And there are beautiful examples of this kind of supervised courtship, which of course can still be deeply personal in Celtic traditions. I'm thinking of some Irish traditions where there are all sorts of rules and regulations about how the elders supervise the first dating situations of boys and girls who are at that moment of adolescence when courtship is officially ready to start as far as the society is concerned. So I'm saying that the fact that Agamemnon refers to his duly courted wife, kouridiē, wife, in the context of how I now prefer the trophy wife, so to speak, and it's not even the wife; it's the trophy woman who was assigned to him, and when there was a division of, I hate to say it this way, loot, plunder, where these aristocratic women who were captured were treated as property to be assigned to the victorious warriors. And it's no accident. I'm sorry that I'm going on, but that was such a beautiful observation. How it's significant that the name of the trophy woman who is assigned to Agamemnon is Chryseis, meaning the golden one, just as Agamemnon is the number one leader in the Iliad because he's the king of Mycenae rich in gold. So the gold is the signature, so to speak, for his social superiority over everybody else. Very bad character, I think, already in the Iliad.
To this point, Craig, about kouridiē, do the other Achaean heroes have this epithet applied to their wives? Because I'm thinking everyone else was wooing Helen first, and then they ended up with other women. But Agamemnon, when he was wooing Helen, it was for somebody else.
Yes.
Am I opening a can of worms here?
Well, not a can of worms, more like Pandora's box.
Okay.
So all sorts of things come out of the box that can still be very beautiful, not necessarily worm-like.
Okay.
but trouble. So could I just say, Keith did open Pandora's box by talking about the courtship procedures that went on when Helen was finally married off to Menelaus. And we know a lot about this from a fragment that comes down to us from the poetry of Hesiod. So not Homeric fragment, a Hesiodic fragment, where we find out that there were only 2 Achaean heroes who did not court Helen. When I'm saying only 2 Achaean heroes, I mean 2 from among the characters that we know all too well by now, having experienced both the Iliad and the Odyssey. So shall we play a game? I know that you, my friends, all 4 of you know the answer, but just for the fun of it, let's have the participants out there guess who the 2 are, and maybe you can just take on the role of a participant who is not you, because I know you know the answer. But who are the 2 Achaeans who did not court Helen?
Boy, I've forgotten. I have to
Well,
confess.
Well, okay, you can pretend
But
you've
our
forgotten.
friend named Helen might know.
Achilles?
Achilles is a very good, that is definitely so. Achilles is one of them. He was underage.
He's exempt.
He's exempt.
If I remember well, you have Menelaus.
Who is the other?
Menelaus.
Exactly. So the other one is the husband, the eventual husband. So who courted Helen on behalf of the husband? It was Agamemnon. Now that is a Pandora's box, and maybe we'll just leave it at that for now. But Agamemnon is definitely, may I put it this way, a dysfunctional wooer, a dysfunctional agent of courtship. I'll leave it at that. But going back to that lovely set of observations by the participant, and Helen was reporting that there were really 2 observations, but I fixated on one of them. I do think, stepping all the way back, that there's something dysfunctional about Agamemnon already in the Iliad. And certainly Aeschylus, great poet that he is, picks up on that dysfunctionality in other ways.
Another participant pointed out that there are metaphors, lion and eagles. To understand these metaphors, don't you need a background?
Yes, you do. and I must say, my question was very tricky, because surely if you're part of that song culture in 458 BCE, you know so many things that the 4 of us, well, the 5 of us, no, there are 5 of us, the 5 of us do not know. So we'll start with that. I know what was in the back of my mind when I asked that question, which was that I am sure that somebody like Aeschylus, just like everybody else who was a citizen of Athens, would have gone to the great festival of the goddess Athena in August, every 4 years at least, and experienced a retelling in whatever form of what we know as the Homeric Iliad and the Odyssey. So it's it's to me inevitable that that the body politic of Athens should have been knowledgeable about the Iliad and the Odyssey. So we start with that. But even if you don't play with those historical indications, I would say it's still remarkable that in the Agamemnon of Aeschylus, there is a very accurate recap of almost everything that you need to know about the Trojan War narrative in order to understand what's going to happen in the Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides. So
could I maybe pick up on that a little bit?
Please,
we've
please.
touched on, we've been mainly focusing on the Iliad, and we know that kind of starts, 10 years into the Trojan War, but we know there were things that are kind of glossed over. And then things that happened in between the Iliad and the Odyssey, as it were, which are some of which are alluded to.
Beautiful.
But there are things they leave out, and we know that there are these plot summaries of the epic cycle. So would there have been a familiarity with those narratives as well?
Yes, yes, with them as well. And in a sense, we can see that from all the references to aspects of the Trojan War narrative and beyond that we don't get spelled out for us in the Homeric Iliad plus the Homeric Odyssey, but that do get spelled out in these epic traditions of which we only have plot outlines and bits and pieces. Yeah.
So given that the Iliad and the Odyssey were the two main showpieces, if you like, the most important ones, is that maybe why the tragedians started to focus on these other episodes and develop them in some way?
I would say that you must surely be right, dear Sarah, the way you said it. I like the way you said it. My only tweak to that formula, I think, is that somebody like Euripides is such a wonderful archaeologist of the song culture. So he will dig deeper than his predecessors, Sophocles, and further back, Aeschylus. And I would say that in the case of Euripides, the way he goes deep into these alternative traditions is something special. Whereas with the predecessors, I don't know, I have a sense that there was kind of an awareness, at least, of these other traditions. And I know I could talk for 5 more hours about this. And in a way, when you read Aristotle's Poetics, and when you see that for somebody like Aristotle, who's of course a citizen of the 4th century Athenian scene, it's pretty clear that for him, Homer is only the Iliad and the Odyssey, not the cycle. And so we know where this is all going, but it's just very complex. I almost want to say messy in the 5th century. It's very hard to sort out. I think we've done a good job of outlining for the wonderful readers out there just how vast the repertoire of ancient Greek song culture was, but also how relentlessly what became the classics got narrowed down to the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Thank you.
I'm going to have nightmares about how incomplete my reportage was on this in our conversation, but I think you four really helped me at least paint the big picture with very broad brushstrokes.
That's good for these office hours, I think. We don't need to have 5-hour office hours, I suppose.
I would love to.
Delight as it would be, yeah. But I'll take this as my cue for the hour 17 question, which is the Furies are on whose side, really, in the Libation Bearers of Aeschylus and in the Eumenides of Aeschylus? I like that word, Greg, that you inserted there, really. Whose side are they really on?
Yes, yes.
Because it's not clear.
Tricky, tricky. So what did our brave readers come up with?
It was not easy. So they are wondering, one of them is wondering, are they on both sides, Clytemnestra and Orestes? And he adds their function is to drive murderers from their home and bring them to a place where happiness is not a custom. He takes the quote from the play.
Wow. That's a brilliant observation, that these Furies have agenda that go beyond one side versus another side. And in a way, isn't it relevant that what Athena, as the patron goddess of the city-state of Athens, is really after here, the agenda of Athena, how these agenda have to do with getting rid of the dysfunctional old custom of vendetta. And I love that Italian word, which is, of course, derived from the same Latin word that gives us vindictive, vindictiveness, etc., etc. But vendetta has such a wonderful flavor, doesn't it? And so Athens is saying, the state is saying to its citizens in 458 BCE, we're over it. We don't do vendetta. We are a society that operates on the principle of the rule of law, and therefore trial by jury, and you can't take vengeance into your own hands. You have to have society, a kind of more elevated idea of society that goes beyond the dysfunctional heroic age take over. And I love to think of any Erinyes, any quote-unquote fury, that's our translation for Erinyes, as a kind of embodiment of a collective anger that doesn't bother getting individuated or even being sorted out as being on one side or another. It's just the anger that's left over after somebody dies. What happens to that anger? That anger has to be processed. It's, may I use my favorite expression, unfinished business. And Erinyes, which is a feminine noun, is almost a collectivization of all the potential anger that men or women, why don't we throw in children as well, would take to the grave with them. And that anger has to be somehow processed. And because Helen is a francophone, a native francophone, I love the fact that in French, process is also trial.
Yes.
That says it all.
Exactly.
So I must say, I love that question of mine. And in my old age, I'm so into thinking of the heroic age as a dysfunctional age that has to be purged, purified. It has so many things that we admire because it's larger than life. But if the heroic age is to survive forever in our reception from one generation to the next, it has to be processed. And the processing, I love to use the word ritual in the broadest sense of programmed social behavior that is concerned about how the present can become the future, that processing requires the purification of the pollutions of the past, of the dysfunctionalities of the past, because notionally the present, if we have confidence in our society, I'm talking about 458 BCE, not today. If we have confidence in our society, that society should be able to process the heroic past, but the processing can only happen if this is going to go on, not just today, not just tomorrow, but forever into the future. And that's the beauty of ritual. Ritual is the promise of ultimate purification, of ultimate freedom from the pollutions of the past. And I love the fact that in that wonderful book by Mary Douglas, Purity and Danger, what purity is all about is how ritualized behavior can make up for, may I put it this way, the messiness of the past.
I will follow your lead on the messiness. People are talking about messiness of the situation in Libation Bearers.
So messy.
It is messy. And instead of Erinyes representing one side, the other side, maybe they are just representing the messiness of the situation.
I love it. I love it.
And then in Eumenides, this is resolved. And can we say this Eumenides is the catharsis of this
yes.
Process?
Oh, and I'm so glad that our dear Janet used the word catharsis. There it is, because that is the ritual purification of all the ills, shall we say, of the heroic age. And you can look at it in a moralistic way. And that's what the word purification implies in English, maybe in an overly specialized way, or you can look at it scientifically or pseudo-scientifically even as a purging of something that is polluted, of something that's sick, something that's infected, something that's toxic.
So as we reach the end of the Eumenides and we start having this justice system, one of the things that is coming up is the difference between a blood relative and a non-blood relative. And to what extent is that telling us something about, as we've moved away from that heroic era and into the era of classical Athens, is that telling us something about that society as well?
That's such a lovely formulation, Sarah, because I think of the fact that by 458, unless you were a hyper aristocrat, you couldn't trace yourself backward genealogically beyond, I don't know, your grandparents or maybe your great-grandparents if you're lucky. And with heroes, those are so far back, those characters, that they're not blood relations to you, they're social relations to you. So in a sense, the mentality of blood relations, which if you're a super aristocrat like a king of Sparta, who can trace himself back to Heracles by 20 generations, the heroic age does not involve blood relatives anymore. So this way, if you go back to the dilemma of Electra, which I find so compelling, which is, how do I make contact with my father? And she is so confused, her mindset is so messy that she thinks, well, blood has to be shed in place of blood, because after all, Agamemnon is for me a blood relative, but for somebody in Argos, he's nobody's blood relative anymore, unless maybe there are some elites rattling around in Argos who can still claim some kind of um, genetic link with this prototypical hero, but frankly, it's just perverse for Electra to be speaking of shedding blood as if it were a sacrifice. Everybody knows in 458 BCE that you don't sacrifice humans. And she's talking as if it were sacrifice. So she has no idea that what we have to do is substitute animals for humans when it comes to sacrifice. Sacrifice has not yet been properly defined. She talks about it in a dysfunctional way. And she turns to the chorus, teach me how to make libation. Teach me how to make contact with the past. And the lesson for her, because she's a very dysfunctional person, is different from the lesson that we get, which is that, oh, these characters are not our blood relatives, and we don't do sacrificial killing of humans. All of that is out. We're in a different age. We're in an age of functional ritual, which means we slaughter animals and we admit our human guilt for the capacity to slaughter humans in a way that would violate the cosmic order. Of course, ancient world has the blind spot that warfare is not considered immoral. But let's not go there. I don't think we need to open another Pandora's box, which is that the ritual world of the present in 458 has a lot of moral gaps that Aeschylus probably wouldn't recognize. And sometimes I don't think we recognize either.
All right, one Pandora's box shall be enough for office hours. So we'll have to wait until the next time for that one.
I can hardly wait. There'll be lots more.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks to the three of you.
Thank you all. This is so invigorating, so intellectually, I don't know, electrifying for me. So thank you, and thank you all of you out there for all the stimulating dialogue.